I recently experienced a significant change at my job. I got demoted. When my husband, Henrik, returned home that day, his face told me something wasn't right. I almost dropped my tea in surprise. His company's been struggling lately, and I knew there were going to be some big changes because of it. But I never expected it to directly affect Henrik. Despite the situation, I felt it was crucial to be supportive as his wife. Times might be tough, but we'll get through it together, I reassured him cheerfully. My name's Wilma, I'm 47 years old, and I work full-time in the back office. Henrik, who's 2 years older, and I live with our high school sophomore daughter, Astrid, and my 67-year-old mother-in-law, Nova. Nova and I don't always see eye to eye, but since I'm working outside the house, we mostly just cross paths at home. So, I've decided not to let it bother me. I told Astrid about Henrik's demotion, asking her to be understanding around him. However, Henrik's frustration started to spill over and, unfortunately, it seemed like I was the one catching the brunt of it. They say people tend to vent to those closest to them, and that's exactly what was happening. All his frustrations seemed directed at me. The next day, as I was tidying up during my day off, Henrik passed by and suddenly remarked, "You've gained weight since we got married, haven't you?" I was taken aback. Well, I am 47, and it's not uncommon for women to gain weight around menopause. However, according to my recent company health checkup, I wasn't considered overweight. But Henrik didn't seem to care about the facts. "Forget the health checkup," he said harshly. "Your figure is unsightly. You're just being lazy." His words cut deep. Suddenly, he called me ugly and locked himself in our room. I was left in shock, trying to understand what had just happened. Why was he suddenly saying such hurtful things? I pinched my side, feeling a surge of self-consciousness. Yes, I could feel some extra weight, but why was it only now becoming an issue? I felt like I'd been struck by an arrow out of nowhere. The shock was so intense that I dropped the mop I was holding, the clatter echoing through the hallway. From that day on, Henrik's treatment of me grew increasingly harsh. And to add to my distress, it seemed my mother-in-law had overheard our argument that weekend and decided to chime in. It felt like the tension in the house had doubled overnight. As I trudged up the stairs with a basket of laundry, intending to hang the clothes, my mother-in-law appeared at the top of the staircase, and I knew things were about to get even more complicated. No, my mother-in-law didn't descend the stairs. She simply waited at the top, ready to unleash her comments. She'd make remarks like, "Oh, how awful. If only you weren't so fat, we could pass each other on the stairs. I wouldn't have to wait here because only one person can pass due to your obesity." It didn't stop there. During dinner, especially when I served fried chicken, she'd say, "Isn't this what's making you fat?" and snatch away my plate. She even suggested that the three of them who weren't overweight should eat separately from me. My gynecologist had warned me that after middle age, either you gain weight or lose it. But while my mother-in-law was as skinny as a dried-up tree, she didn't hesitate to keep up her petty harassment. It had become so commonplace that I had somewhat grown accustomed to it. However, what truly hurt was my husband's behavior. Since that incident, Henrik had completely shut down communication with me. No thank you, or even acknowledging my efforts, not even when I served him breakfast. He'd eat silently and leave the room. In the bedroom, we still shared the space, but he'd just turn away and bury himself in his smartphone. Feeling invisible in my own home was unbearable. One night, I mustered the courage to confront him. Did I do something to deserve being ignored? I asked. His response cut deep. Not really, but I just don't want to talk to anyone other than humans. He then added, I don't want to be seen as a family with someone this fat. If you care about me, lose some weight. His words left me disheartened. Despite my efforts, the effects of aging were catching up, as they do for many. Even though I walked 1 mile for my commute, I was trying my best. Yet, He coldly dismissed my efforts, saying if the results weren't showing, it was as good as not trying. "Don't talk to me anymore," he concluded, and from then on, he truly lived up to those words. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law continued her teasing, questioning my food choices at every meal. It got to a point where I felt I could only eat salads and boiled vegetables. Henrik observed all this in silence, moving his chopsticks without a word. It seemed my marriage was reaching its breaking point. In my spare moments, I started packing my belongings. If I was going to be treated as if I were invisible by Henrik, maybe it would be better to just disappear. When I shared my thoughts with my daughter, she understood. "I've seen Grandma and Dad always pick on you during meal times. It's hard to watch," she sympathized. "I'll go with you, Mom. We can live at your parents' house, and I can still go to high school from there." Tomorrow marks the day when the demotion I've known about for a while kicks in, right after the winter break. It seems like a fitting time for a fresh start. Henrik approached with a smile, suggesting we all have a drink to mark the start of his new life without subordinates starting tomorrow. But by this point, I had lost the desire to play along. Even his forced smile grated on my nerves. He proposed having a nightcap during dinner and offered to make wine spritzers. This was the first time he had spoken to me since the day after his demotion was announced. He even included Astrid, suggesting she have juice while he prepared a wine spritzer for me. As Henrik set the prepared drinks on the table, I couldn't shake a strange feeling. When he momentarily turned away to search for the TV remote, I took a sniff of the drink he had made. There was a faint smell that I recognized from my cooking experiences. How could he think to make me drink this? I had had enough of my mother-in-law's harassment and being ignored by my husband. It was time to take a stand. The sight of the wine spritzer pushed me over the edge. "I'm sorry, could you get the camembert cheese from the fridge, Henrik? It's from a local dairy farm, and it's really delicious," I said, hoping he would at least do that much. Expressing joy at the prospect of family time, I made the switch while he was away. Henrik returned with the cheese, and I announced that dinner was ready, loud enough for my mother-in-law and daughter to hear. They made their way to the dining room, and we all took our seats, pretending it was just a regular dinner. However, my plate was devoid of meatloaf or cornbread salad. Instead, I had stewed chicken soup and cheese, accompanied by the suspicious wine spritzer. Astrid broke the silence, prompting us to eat. Henrik and my mother-in-law remained silent. As I sipped the wine spritzer, Henrik watched me closely. I smiled and remarked that it was good. His murmured response went unnoticed as I continued to eat. Suddenly, a red liquid shot out from my mother-in-law's mouth, reminiscent of Godzilla's fire breath. Astrid stood up in shock, and some of the liquid splashed onto her salad. Concerned, she rushed to get a towel. Upon her return, Astrid noticed something strange. "Grandma, your mouth looks like spicy cod roe," she exclaimed, causing my mother-in-law to panic. "Hey, you!" my mother-in-law shrieked, lunging at me. I coldly brushed her hand away, denying any involvement. "It wasn't me," Henrik made it, I clarified, pointing the finger at my husband. The shock of being brushed off for the first time and hearing that Henrik was responsible must have been overwhelming for her. "What?" my mother-in-law screamed, her lips still covered in sauce, then turned to look at Henrik, who was visibly trembling. Leaning towards Henrik, I rested my hand on the table to exert some pressure. "You thought you could hide it in the wine spritzer, didn't you? I could smell it a little because I've used it before." "That was a drop of hell, wasn't it?" I accused, referencing the spicy sauce I had bought at a food fair in Alabama. "It's not as famous as death sauce, but because it has a hint of lime, I liked it more for its homey taste." That hint of lime was what I smelled, which means he mixed a considerable amount into the drink. My mother-in-law must not have noticed due to the smell of the wine spritzer, or thought the lime smell was part of the flavoring. That's probably why she drank it. But regardless, this was a seriously malicious prank, extremely vicious. Wait, Dad did that? Astrid exclaimed, wearing a shocked expression. Henrik confessed, I actually intended for Wilma to drink it. You should exchange it with yours, frothing at the mouth. Mother-in-law, still out of line, insisted, as soon as she found out it was meant for me, she wants to push it onto me. No way am I switching to that dangerous drink, I said in a low voice, maintaining my pressure on Henrik. Why on earth did you think of doing something so outrageous? I cornered him, demanding an explanation. You were staying chubby and spicy food boosts metabolism, so I thought I'd make it, he replied, his excuse falling flat. Wow, that's pathetic. What a lame excuse. I laughed sarcastically, utterly embarrassed by his reasoning. Pressuring my husband, he hesitated and slightly moved his chair back. I'm not crazy, this is a legitimate reason to support your diet. Here, exchange this with your cup and drink it. I made it for you, he persisted. My husband retreated as I closed in, narrowing the distance between us. What are you saying? As the one who made it, you should taste it to see if it's delicious. Come on, taste it as the one who cooked it. You should take responsibility. I slammed the table, the sound echoing in the tense silence. Unable to withstand the pressure any longer, my husband stood up from his chair and backed off. After a moment of silence, the tension in the room lingered, unresolved. Drink it, a quiet voice spoke, breaking the tension. My husband and I turned to the source of the voice, our daughter, Astrid. She began to speak, her words coming out as if she was squeezing them out. Taking your frustration out on Mom, who supports you the most when things don't go well at work, and repeating cruel treatments. This is like a childish prank. I might not be supposed to say this to my parents, but it's too childish and unbearable to watch. Astrid stood up, facing her father. Is it wrong to be overweight? Mom wakes up early and walks to work, and she also brings lunch, so it's not like she's not trying. Then she turned to her grandmother, and you're going along with it, taking away my mom's dinner like fried chicken. What Grandma is doing is like middle school seniors and juniors. It's embarrassing. Nova began to make a confused excuse, but Astrid wasn't having it. Compassion is something that is conveyed to the other person. It hurt to see Mom's dinner taken away despite Mom looking sad. I wouldn't call that compassion. Astrid continued, now addressing her father again. Mom goes to the gynecologist every month and keeps herself active, but despite all that, Dad just ignores her because she's put on some weight. What's his deal? That atmosphere he creates by ignoring her makes the house feel so tense. Can't he see that? She then pointed out, even Colonel Sanders and Aunt Stella from the cookie ads are plump. There's a term called happy weight, you know. If she gets older and becomes a lovely grandmother like Aunt Stella, I'd be thrilled. When I have kids and she's become a grandma, wouldn't it be great to say, Mom, you've come to some happy weight, and laugh about it? That's my dream. Could you please not ruin it for me? Her words were direct, her gaze cold as ice, but they warmed my heart like hot milk to go with cookies. It's a pathetic sight to see a father scorned by his own daughter, she added, before delivering one final blow. If you're going to ignore someone because of weight gain due to aging, you should realize that with your thinning hair, you could easily be overlooked yourself. The tension was palpable at the dinner table, her biting words bringing a chill to the living room. It seemed she had said all she wanted to. After a pause, she turned to me. That's enough, Mom. It's time to let it go. It will be better for you. Her words took me aback. It would be better if I let go? I echoed, unsure. That's right. You should let it go, she affirmed. As I said earlier, my dream is to see you holding my child, saying you've gained some happy weight and laughing. For my sake, I want you to be happy because that's part of my dream. So please let it go. Be happy and fulfill my dream. Her words filled my heart, Every single one making me so happy that I didn't care about being ignored by my husband, the fat shaming from my mother-in-law, or the drink issue. Warm tears streamed down my cheeks. Yes, you're right. I choked out, my vision blurred with tears. Hurry up, Mom, she urged, patting my back gently. Okay, I managed, wiping my tears. I went to the kitchen and brought back a document I had been hiding for some time. What I had been hiding for some time was divorce papers. My husband let out a startled exclamation when I presented them, with only my name written on them. After about a month of being ignored, I started thinking it might be best for us to go our separate ways. I just wanted you to lose some weight, my husband confessed, his panic evident. If you had slimmed down as I asked, I would have been content. I only realized it was venting after Astrid pointed it out, but since you didn't lose any weight, I thought I'd torment you more. I didn't mean for this to happen, he rambled, visibly shaken. Astrid interjected sharply. It's on those who didn't notice until things got serious, and what they're so upset about is incredibly childish. Nova, in a panic, tried to plead with Astrid, but she shut her down firmly. I decline. I don't want to breathe the same air as people who act like middle schoolers anymore, Astrid retorted, refusing to entertain her grandmother's plea. Realizing he had no choice, Henrik picked up the glass placed before him and gulped it all down at once. Like Nova earlier, he ended up spewing a stream of the red liquid from his mouth, resulting in a striking set of lobster-like lips. Astrid took a picture of both of them with their lobster lips on her phone, calling them so lame, before leaving the living room. I decided to follow her, leaving behind a dinner table splashed with wine cocktail mixed with a drop of hell, along with a husband and mother-in-law with red lobster lips. Returning to my parents' house with Astrid, we explained the situation, and they were furious. They went to confront Henrik and Nova, bringing back the divorce papers, and I ended up getting divorced. Henrik hit rock bottom in his career and spent his remaining years without any significant achievements. Nova, stuck in a stalemate in a two-person household, eventually called, admitting, if you and Astrid were here, it wouldn't be so stale. My mother joked, better gain weight while you can. Once you have grandchildren, you'll have more physical work to do. Today, as always, I'm walking to work when my boss drives by and offers me a lift. No thanks, I'm on a diet, I respond. Just get in, Wilma, he insists. I found a new boyfriend, both of us having been divorced once. Dieting is good and all, but it would be a problem if I'm late, he remarks while driving. I've never been late before, I respond, puffing up my cheeks. He glances my way and prods my puffed-up cheek with his finger. Give me the time you saved by riding in the car today for our conversation, he says, ever the talkative boyfriend.